I would like to start with the following write-up. It was written by a man named Henry Alford. It's called Word for the Ages. As an old African saying goes, the death of an old person is like the burning of a library. It's a lovely idea. Gertrude Baines, 114 years old, the world's oldest person, lives in Los Angeles, the world's most youth-obsessed city. It's like finding a vintage Ferrari in a parking lot full of Hondas. During the 20th century, we added almost 3 decades to the average human life expectancy. What are we doing with these extra years? Are we making good use of them? Or just soliloquizing about other better times and the fascinating intricacies of our various maladies? In the example of Gertrude Baines, the answer is the former. Baines lived independently with a caretaker's help until she broke her hip at the age of 107. This daughter of former slaves, in her lifetime she has seen women win the right to vote and blacks reclaim it, cast her ballot for President Barack Obama. I didn't think I'd ever live this long. She makes it clear she bears no regrets about her life and holds no secret of longevity. She paints a portrait of old age whose hallmarks are wit and acceptance. I salute her. It's commonly said, but I believe it anyway, that old folks are wise. Indeed, for many over the age of 70, old age is, outside of medical maladies, a time of self-fulfillment and self-mastery. A time when they are more themselves than ever. The reasons for this vary. For some, it's a question of having more time to self-reflect. For others, it may be a product of having thrown off societal constraints or being more conscious of the diminishing time on the planet. Our cultural landscape is currently graced with a group of creative people over 70 who critics say are doing some of the best work of their careers. Writers Philip Roth and Joan Didion, sculptor Louise Bourgeois, and composer Elliott Carter. It would be presumptuous to ascribe their continued success to one single reason, and yet it's not hard to conclude that perhaps practice really does make perfect. Aging itself is a product of civilization. By wiping out our predators and by making advances in medicine, humans have given themselves the opportunity to grow old. If being old is all bodily pains and reduced eyesight and faulty wiring, and don't get me started on the topic of dermal creeping, then why anthropologically and evolutionarily speaking would we have bothered to grant ourselves this opportunity? Vanity alone seems insufficient cause. I would argue that humans have accorded themselves long life because elders serve an important role in society. As an old African saying goes, the death of an old person is like the burning of a library. These living libraries are among our greatest sources of wisdom. As with truth or beauty or genius, wisdom can be difficult to define. You know it when you see it, though. But I think T.S. Eliot got close to a working description when he wrote in 4 quartets, "The only wisdom we can hope to acquire is humility. Humility is endless." Gertrude Baines exhibits some of this endlessness. May it only increase. So this is the topic we're here to talk about today. The role the elderly play in our society, and why the Torah creates such a value on showing respect to the elderly. There are for some among us that see the elderly in terms of what they provide for them. My bubby always makes the best cookies, right? However, what we're going to see today is that there's a holistic value that the elderly add to our society, a rounding out, a ability to give over wisdom that is not only strong but also tempered and softened by years and years and years of experience. And that is why the Torah speaks of it with such great import. Let's look at our source sheet. Source number 1. Stand before those who are gray, mipnei seva takum, v'hadarta pnei zaken, and you shall honor the face of the elderly. V'yaresa me'elokecha ani Hashem, and you should fear your God, I am Hashem. Now, first of all, are these two separate things? Stand before the gray and honor the face of the elderly? Are they contiguous for a reason? Are they part of a spectrum? And why does this verse suddenly stick in there, and you should fear Hashem, and you should fear your God, I am Hashem? Just seems like a weird place to put that. Of all random verses, we have specific rules for when those come into play, and we talked about it actually in one of our previous sessions. When does the Torah say, I am the Lord your God? You shall fear me, I am Hashem. When does it say that? Remember we talked about this last time we met, 2 weeks ago? Okay, so we'll see then inside. All right. Now we're going to see actually a very interesting dispute between Rashi, who is one of the primary commentators of the Torah, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, who lived from 1040 to 1105, and the Ramban, Nachmanides, who was a great Spanish Jewish halachist and philosopher who ended up moving to Israel when he was basically kicked out of Spain after defeating a ex-Jew, or a Jew who had converted to Christianity. Of course, he was still a Jew, and was making a lot of trouble for the Jews. Okay, source number 2 is the Rashi on that verse that we read in source number 1. Rashi says, stand before those who are gray. You might think that this applies to an ignorant old man. Therefore, the verse says zakein, which implies one who has acquired wisdom. The word zakein in Hebrew is seen in many times as a shortened version of zeh kana chachma. This person has acquired wisdom. So according to Rashi, the Torah specifically says, stand before those who are gray and honor the face of the zakein, to tell you which type of elderly should you be providing all this respect for. One who has acquired wisdom, a zakein, zeh kana chachma. This one has acquired wisdom. Honor the face of the elderly. How do you honor them? You do not sit in their place, you do not speak in his turn, and you do not contradict his words. Right? The same sort of respect that you're supposed to give towards your parents. There are certain laws of what respect means that we have. The Torah says you shall respect your parents and fear your parents, and it's sort of the same type of laws. Don't contradict, don't speak before them, don't sit in their places. Give them their place, give them their voice. Okay. Now Nachmanides, source number 3, says the Torah is commanding us to honor all people, older people, even if they are ignorant and uncultured. So he says like this, when the Torah says mipnei seivatakum, which is stand up before those who are gray, it does not say zakein in that part of the phrase. Therefore, he says that means that you should show honor and respect, stand up before anybody who's elderly, okay, even if they are not very learned, even if they are not very cultured, just by dint of what they've gained in their life. And then it commands us to respect the zakein. The next part of the verse, again, the verse can be broken up into 3 parts. Mipnei seivatakum, stand up before the gray. V'hadarta pnei zakein, and honor the face of the elderly. And you shall fear Hashem, I am your God. I am Hashem. You shall fear your God, I am Hashem. So Rashi says that the second part of the verse that says, and honor the face of the zakein, is teaching you about the first part of the verse. When it says honor, stand up before those who are gray, it's referring to those who are the zakein, those who have acquired wisdom. Nachmanides says no. There's 3 parts to this verse, and there are 3 independent parts. The first part says stand up before the elderly, no matter who they are, no matter how much they know or don't know. Then it says, v'hadarta pnei zakein, and honor the face of the zakein. He says, then it commands us to respect the zakein, which refers to one who has acquired wisdom, even if he is young and learned. So according to Nachmanides, the first part says honor the elderly. Who? All the elderly. And honor the zakein. Who is that? That's those who have acquired wisdom, even if they happen to be young. Okay. So that at least first see a very interesting dispute between 2 of the early commentators about how to understand this verse. Now, the next source we're going to see is a fascinating piece, which is it actually says it's not referring to the elderly at all. The verse is not referring to the elderly. Look at what it says in source number 4. This is it's from the Midrash HaNe'elam, which is not a very common source. Okay. Amar Rabbi Bo. Rabbi Bo said, Hu moser liyanika. The verse is giving over an exhortation to the young people. Kolomar mipnei seva takum. It's saying, rise before the elderly. It means that one should rise to do good before he becomes elderly. And if he does, then he will honor himself in his old age. So again, the verse said, get up before the elderly, before those who are gray, and honor the face of the elderly. The Midrash and the Elam explains it as saying, is if you get up and do what you're supposed to do before you get elderly, then you will honor your face of who you are when you are elderly, because you have built for yourself an empire of respect, an empire of appreciation. It's a very, very interesting source, totally unlike the two previous sources that we saw. Here he's saying, when you're young, focus on doing the right thing, and this way, when you are older, you'll get the honor you deserve because you'll have built for it. Isn't that interesting? So we got, right, same verse, three different explanations so far. Okay? Again, Rashi says that when it says, you shall honor the face of stand up, before the gray, and honor the face of the elderly. Part B is explaining part A. Part B, which says, you shall honor the face of the Zakein, is telling you, who do you get up for? Who do you show that respect for? The person who's acquired wisdom. And that's the kind of elderly that you stand up for. Nachmanides says, no, you stand up for every elderly, you show respect to every elderly, and you also show respect for someone who acquired wisdom, even if they're young. And the Midrash and Ne'alam says, it just means, when you're young, do the right thing, get up and do before you are gray, and this way you'll honor yourself in your old age. Okay. Now we get to the third part of the verse. What is the function of the third part of the verse? Everyone, you guys okay so far? Okay? We're good? Okay. The third part of the verse says, and you shall fear Hashem, let me just get it exactly right. And you should fear your God, I am Hashem. Now, last time we met, we said, when does the Torah tell you you should fear Hashem, I am your God?
Ten Commandments.
What?
Ten Commandments.
Not exactly.
And Shema.
We said it last time when we met, we said that we say that specifically when there's a chance that you're going to pretend like you didn't know something. Remember, last time we learned about Lashon Hara, about gossip.
Yeah.
And if you remember, the verse there said, and you shall fear your God, I am Hashem. You might say something hurtful, and then, oh no, I was only joking. I didn't mean it. I'm kidding. Oh, you can't take a joke. Come on, remember we talked about this last time? So the verse says, I am Hashem, your God. I know the deal. You can pretend like you were just being a joke. You're joking around, but I know the deal. Do not do that. The same thing happens over here. When it comes to caring for the elderly, people often pretend like they didn't notice the needs of the elderly. Like, oh, I didn't realize that person was walking slowly across the street and probably could have used someone to help them get across. I didn't see, I'm gonna rush, I'm on my way to work. I didn't see that, no, I'm walking along, I didn't notice that, no. Hashem says, no. I know what you saw. I know what you're aware of. I know that you're sitting in your house at night and thinking, I really should call my bubby, my neighbor who's elderly. We just had a blackout. Who knows how they're doing, what's going on. I really should call and check in, but the game is about to start. Oh, I didn't think about it, didn't I? You did think about it, because I am Hashem, your God. I know what you're thinking. I know what you see. Don't pretend like you didn't see that. Don't pretend like you didn't notice it. Source number 5. The Babylonian Talmud, Kiddushin 32b. You might think that you can close your eyes as if you didn't see him. Right? Even like a person gets on the bus. Right? This has happened to me. This has for sure happened to me. You get on a bus, it's been a long day. And you've been on your feet the entire day. You are exhausted. And you get on the bus. And, of course, how many seats are available on the bus? Zero. No, zero. So you're standing there and you're waiting and you're watching. You're kind of scoping out the crowd. Who's shifting? Who's gathering their bags together so you can dart over there, right? And luckily, someone relatively within like 2 or 3 rows of you, you see they start gathering their stuff, you jet over to the seat. Right? There's a little jostling involved, but whatever. You know? Okay, fine. You sit down in the seat. Finally. The first time all day that your feet are resting. And the next bus, the bus stops at the next stop, and an elderly man or woman gets on the bus, and you're like, I just sat down. I've been on my feet all day. Somebody else can get up for them, right? Chances are, I imagine the rest of the bus didn't get up all day. It was not standing all day. They were probably at their offices, sitting at a comfortable chair all day, and I've been on my feet all day. Let somebody else. I'm gonna look outside, see the view. Wow, it's amazing. That wall right next to our bus. Beautiful. Look at the architecture of that wall. It's amazing. The detail of the stone. It's amazing. God says, no, buddy. Get up. I saw that you saw. Right? You make sure you're the one who gets up. Don't wait for somebody else to get up. Because you know what? You can't get up for anybody else. You can get up for yourself, and that's the right thing to do. Therefore, the verse says, stand and fear God. By those things that are given over to one's heart, the Torah always says you should fear God. Any time where there's something that you know, and maybe no one else knows, Hashem says, but I know too. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, how do we know? Now here's a very interesting component as well. This is Burnham. If I can just get any kind of drink, if you don't mind. Thank you so much, I really appreciate it. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, how do we know an elderly person should not make others stand for him? Since the verse says, V'hadarta pnei zakein, and you shall honor the face of the elderly, and the very next word next to elderly is v'yaresa. Thank you so much, I appreciate it. Alrighty. Quick bracha, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol nihiyeh bidbaro. Amen. Okay, so the juxtapositions of the word zakein, which means elderly, or, by the way, also one who has acquired wisdom, and the next word is v'yaresa, and you shall be afraid, you shall fear, teaches you, don't abuse your position as an elderly person. Meaning, what does that mean? Like, look, if you get on a bus and you're elderly, you deserve the seat if someone stands up. But sometimes you know that if, I'm going to walk into that room, everyone's going to stand up for me. I could use a little boost right now. I'm not feeling so awesome, right? Why don't I just stroll on into this room? Everyone's going to stand up, give me special greetings. Don't do that. Like, don't abuse it. And interestingly enough, by the way, that same teaching is taught about rabbis. The Talmud records how certain rabbis would go to great lengths to make sure not to come in the middle of like a full study session in the house of study, not to make everybody stand up for them. They didn't want to make other people stand up for them. They just come in on the side, or they wouldn't come in at all. It was already, once the session was already in full swing, they would just wait. They would come in later, whatever it was. So there's an idea that on one hand, the youth are commanded to show respect to the elderly. On the other hand, the elderly are also sort of told, don't abuse it. You got to come into a room, go ahead. But like, if you're just coming in to sort of get your accolade, not a great idea. Okay. Next. Okay. Let's see how we rule. Remember we had that dispute between Rashi and Nachmanides about how do we treat the elderly? Is it only those who actually have gained wisdom or not? What is the final ruling? How do we rule what we call halacha l'maisa, which means actual Jewish law? Okay, so here we're going to look at source number 6. Okay, this is in Maimonides, Laws of Talmud Torah. Okay, so again, Maimonides was the very first person to take all the Jewish law and to compile it into a single compendium. Okay, this is again Maimonides, Laws of Talmud Torah, chapter 6, halacha 9. one who is exceedingly old person, one who is an exceedingly old person, even if he is not wise, others must stand up for him. So who does he rule like? Rashi or Nachmanides? Nope, Nachmanides. Right? Nachmanides was the one who said whether they are wise or not. Even a non-Jewish elderly person must be honored by being spoken to respectfully and by being given an arm to lean on. Right? There's not just like because a person has acquired a lot of Jewish wisdom. If a person is elderly, Jew, non-Jew, whatever it is, we give them that respect, that accord. That is the way Maimonides rules. How about the Jewish Code of Law, which is source number 7, the Shulchan Aruch, the Jewish Code of Law. It is a positive commandment to stand before any wise person, even if he is not old, and even if he is not your own teacher. Okay? So it means, on one hand, if the person is wise, whether he's old or young, we stand up before him. It is also a commandment to stand before one who is old, namely that he is 70 years old, even if he is ignorant, provided that he is not evil. Okay, so the Shulchan Aruch, the Jewish Code of Law, gives more parameters to it. At what point do we start having to have the requirement to stand up for somebody? At the age of 70. And what are the criteria? You don't have to be wise, so you could be ignorant, and we still are required to stand up. However, you can't be evil. So, for example, God forbid, let's say a Nazi collaborator walked into the room or whatever it is. I don't care if he's 93, if he's 97, he's 107. We don't stand up for him. He's a bad person, right? Or, for example, somebody who used his wisdom in a negative way. Let's say someone spent his years helping. Here's an interesting one. Alfred Nobel. Alfred Nobel started the Nobel Peace Prize, and indeed all the Nobel Prizes, because his reputation was really, really bad. Because really he was like a weapons developer. He developed TNT, right? He developed like the modern day bombs and all the munitions that we use today, basically, which are based on explosives. There were previous versions of it, but he was basically, that's what he developed. So at the end of his life, he's like, wow, I'm going to go down in history as a really bad guy. So let me take my money and put it towards this Nobel Prizes that will then honor people who achieve good things for the world, and forever my name will be associated with good. Which actually he did a great job. It worked well, right? I mean, the Nobel Prizes are known throughout the world. That being said, let's say you had somebody who was an elderly person who for his entire life was an arms dealer. He could be wise, but I would not stand up for him, right? Because he used his wisdom in a negative way. Okay, now, yes?
That's like Bugsy Siegel?
Like Bugsy Siegel? Yeah, I mean, okay, that would also be an example.
Well, I mean, he was so bad, but at the very end, he sent all armaments to Israel, and...
Aha, I see what you're saying. Meaning, I'm not really familiar with the end of his life, what he did.
Yeah,
could be, look,
he sent a ton of money and helped them buy weapons, but before that, there was nothing good about him.
right, so if he did proper repentance, then I would have to respect him. I don't know exactly what he did, meaning, I don't know enough about him. Yes.
Madoff, that guy that's in jail now that took a lot of money from organizations.
Right.
People were begging to get into his...
Right, so yeah, if a person uses his wisdom and his guile to scam people and take their money...
at first, didn't he do some good at first?
He did a lot of good. He gave a lot of money to charity, but it wasn't his. Unfortunately, it was... Exactly.
No one knew, though, until...
So again, if you don't know, then you give him respect. Once you find out, again, so there'll be no requirement to stand up. Even, I don't know how old he is, but if he's over 70 years old, I'm not required to show him any respect because he used his money, he used his wisdom in a very, very bad way. Okay, so that's sort of, in terms of, that's how we rule. So we have this machloket, this dispute between Rashi, one of the main primary commentators of the Torah, and Nachmanides, another one of the prime early commentators of the Torah. we see that in terms of how we rule that respect is given to all elderly, even if they are ignorant. Now let me ask you, why? Why?
How do we know who's ignorant?
Let's say we do know.
Because it says so.
Because it says so? Not going to work, not going to fly.
Ignorant in what respect, though? Ignorant in what respect? I mean, maybe they don't understand
They never study, they never learn, they don't, right?
Torah or, yeah.
Go ahead.
Because one day we might be old and we would want that same kind of respect given to us by somebody.
Okay, so you're saying it's a social contract, right? If I respect the elderly who are ignorant, then if I'm elderly and ignorant, one day they'll respect me.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Okay. But the problem, that's unfortunate. That would work. And maybe as a society we can get together and say, hey guys, here are the rules. One day you're going to be elderly and ignorant, so you want respect, so give it right now to those who are elderly and ignorant. And that would be, there is such a societal contract, right? But let's see, maybe there's a deeper reason than that, not just because I want respect for myself. Maybe there's a deeper reason that even the elderly who are ignorant deserve the respect on their own merit. Not just in the sense that I want to get it too. Okay, so maybe Gene was referencing this. A person may be ignorant in respect of actual stuff they learned. They could be illiterate. They could have never read a book in their lives. But the reality is that experience itself gives person wisdom. You've lived on this world for 70 years. You've gained an enormous amount of wisdom and perspective just by what you've seen. And therefore you have an enormous amount of value to add to society. You're not going to be quoting Shakespeare, and you may not be teaching your grandchild advanced mathematics, but you can tell your grandchild when he's getting all, hyped up about this next business venture, you can cool down, man. This is how these things work. You're getting all hyped up now, you're probably blind to some of the things. Let's look into this. You know what I'm saying? Just that wisdom that you get along with age.
So you're talking about life experience.
Exactly. And life experience is its own form of wisdom.
Right.
So it's not what we would call book smart, but it's street smart. By the time you are 70, as they say on the street, you got mad street cred. Okay? So that's why we rule that way.
Hopefully, you got it.
Now there's street cred in terms of what you know. For example, like you may just know, like rushing into a business deal is not good. And there's also street cred in terms of like the sort of the calmness. The younger we are, it's like when we bump, human beings, we like bump around this world, right? We're just like, it's a bunch of like people bumping around. And as we start our lives off, we have a lot more edges. And through our life experiences, hopefully a lot of those edges get rounded out, softened up. Now, of course, there are elderly that are not that way. There are elderly who are just as abrasive at 80 as they were at 18. Right? And that's a sad thing. It's a very, very sad thing, because often those type of elderly end up chasing people away from them, which is incredibly, incredibly sad, because people really want to and can gain a lot from an elderly person, but if they're abrasive and caustic, if they've still got a lot of very sharp bumps around them, and then they're banging into people, people are just going to stay away. But generally speaking, by the time we've bumped around in this world for 70 years, so to speak, a lot of our edges have been softened by years of experience. And even if we may not be able to tell you the Pythagorean theorem or whatever it is, we can tell you, give you that perspective, that calmness, that tolerance. So that's the enormous value that elderly add to society, even if they're ignorant. And that's why both Maimonides and the Jewish code of law rule as halacha, Jewish law, that you must show respect to all elderly, even if they are not wise, because they are wise. Now, here's something fascinating. There's a Talmudic statement where they asked a bunch of rabbis who lived very long lives, what exactly was it that made you merit to live so long? It's a good question, right? What's the secret of your longevity? So the first one said fish oil. The second one said those goji berries. No, I'm kidding. Let's see what they said. Melaleuca, what's up? Okay, fine. Here's what they said. Look at source number 8, Babylonian Talmud, Megillah 27b through 28a. Rabbi Zakkai's students asked him, Bameh ha'arachta yamim, with what did you merit such a long life? He answered them, in all my life I never urinated near a place of prayer. That needs a little bit of perspective, because you're like, I didn't either. So good, you're all going to live very long lives, because you didn't urinate near a place of prayer. In the olden days, there wasn't really, they didn't have bathrooms, So people would literally, as long as, no one was watching, first of all, during the Dark Ages, which were really dark times for the world, people would not only urinate, they would defecate in the street wherever they were, like dogs.
Oh, God.
No offense to the dogs. I'm kidding. There's actually, we have a record of an etiquette book that gives you etiquette in the 14th century. And you can read all the rules. It's fascinating to read the rules of etiquette in the 14th century. But one of the rules of etiquette says that if you're walking down the street and you see your friend squatting to defecate, pretend like you didn't see him. Don't start engaging him in conversation. It's amazing. I have a little child in my house right now. I've got a 2-year-old in my house. Right? So a 2-year-old is old enough that when he has to do a bowel movement, he often will just go to the side and squat. And the kid is uncomfortable, and it's very uncomfortable for him if kids, sometimes other kids in the house will try to engage him, hey, and he's sitting there trying to do his thing, and it's not comfortable. This is literally the etiquette book for adults. If you walk down the street, you're walking down Main Street, and there's your friend sitting there squatting, don't engage him in conversation. Just let him be. It's the same thing as the verse. Pretend, I am Hashem your God. Pretend like you didn't see him. The opposite of what we say when you see an elderly person. Don't pretend like you didn't see him. This etiquette book says pretend like you didn't see him. So in the olden days, they didn't have bathrooms like we have. Now, therefore, a person, especially for urination, a person would generally urinate wherever there's no one's looking. If they just walk into the tall grass and urinate. But you're not supposed to urinate near a place of prayer because there's holiness to that. So evidently, this was considered a real sense of consideration. To always be cognizant, make sure that there was no place of prayer nearby. So that was the first thing he said. And I never referred to my friend by a nickname. Listen to that fascinating one. I never referred to my friend by a nickname. I always call them by their real name. When you call somebody by their real name, there's a certain respect that you're giving them. Yes, a guy's name may be Mo, or I don't know, anything, Tiny, or Sammy the Bull. But if you call him by his real name, Moshe, it's good to see you, you're showing him a greater level of respect, and therefore, it's a greater level of respect in conversation with people. And by the way, there are great rabbis, it's fascinating. There are great rabbis who you'll never hear them say the word I. You talk to them, you ask them for advice, and they'll say we think that you might want to do this or whatever. They don't say I. They work so hard. They're so focused on their refined speech. They don't. The word I is more of an egotistical word. It's we, the general consensus. Of course, everyone's coming to this rabbi for wisdom, and he's dispensing wisdom all day. But it's we. We feel like this would be the best move, It's very interesting. So here, just out of a sign of respect for human beings, he always would call them by their full name. Okay? And I never miss saying Kiddush on Shabbos. Next, Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua said, I never used a synagogue as a shortcut. I'm trying to go from here to there. There's a synagogue in between. I can just walk right through it. A little bit disrespectful, right? So, I never used a synagogue as a shortcut, and I never stepped over other Jews. What does this mean? in the olden times, people used to sit on the floor. So if you came into a study hall and it was packed, right, with people, you'd like have to like sort of like walk over people to get to your seat, which was normal. But he felt out of a greater sense of respect, I can't step over somebody. Even like, it's normal, but I don't want to do that. And I never gave the priestly blessing without first saying a bracha. Rav Pareda said, in all my life, no one ever came to the study hall before me, and I never made a blessing before a Kohen, which means if there was a Kohen there, I would always honor him. You make the blessing. And I never ate from an animal whose priestly portions had not been removed. Means I never had dinner until the charity was taken care of first. Okay? Sort of that kind of, if you want to put it to today's terms. Rabbi Nechunya ben Arkana said, in all my life I never accepted personal honor at the expense of my friend's shame. And I never went to bed before giving one who had cursed him, meaning cursed me, he's saying me basically, and I was overly generous with my money. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha said, I never looked at the face of an evil person. I didn't want to attach myself to evil. So I never looked at the face of an evil person. The less evil in you, the less death in you. And therefore, I never even would look at an evil person. I just didn't want to engage with the whole negative side. Rabbi Zera said, I was never demanding in my house. Hey, where's my dinner? What's going on? I had a hard day. I can't come home and have dinner? Or, who left this sock out? I was never demanding in my home. Everything's soft. And I never walked in front of someone greater than me. I never thought about Torah in a filthy and smelly alleyway. Right? In those days, again, there was refuse running in the streets. And when you're walking, and you're thinking in Torah, it's disrespectful to walk while smelling that and thinking of beautiful, sublime Torah thoughts. I never walked 4 paces without talit and tefillin on, and I never slept in the study hall, and I never rejoiced at another's mistake. I never had that schadenfreude, that little bit of pleasure when someone else messes up, and I never called someone by a nickname. So here's what's fascinating. Here are all these rabbis who lived very long lives. And the theme that we hear again and again and again when they're asked how they lived a long life was basically what? What's the common theme running through this whole thing, basically?
Respect.
Respect. Respect for others. Thinking of others, humility, respect. Remember the reading that we read in the beginning? Humility is the one core sort of concept. Humility is endless. These people, it's amazing. At the end of their lives, no one said because the reason why I lived long is because I know every book on this shelf. Because I studied the Talmud and I finished the Talmud 800 times. Because I can recite, the entire written Torah by heart. No. And these, by the way, were people who could easily have done any of the above. These were all incredibly brilliant people who knew enormous amounts of Torah. The one theme that you see here again and again and again and again is that I respected others. I respected their sensitivities, even their most subtle sensitivities. Oh yeah, don't worry about it. My friends call me Tiny. No, but I'm going to call you by your name. David, Yitzchak, whatever it is. I'm going to accord you that honor to address you by who you really are, even though your friends call you Tiny and you say that you're okay with it. Okay, so that's sort of in terms of like, it's fascinating to see, there's 2 things that we learn out of that source. Number 1 is how to obtain longevity, to be the least abrasive person possible, and the most humble, and the most giving, and the most considerate. I'll tell you, I had a crazy story last week. So last week I was with a group. I do these weeks twice a year. We go out west, usually out west, and we have students coming in from all over America, and we basically what I call a week of learn hard, play hard. So every day we get up in the morning, there's usually like a optional yoga in the morning, and there's like a service, both of standard and explanatory, then we have breakfast, and then we have 2 or 3 classes, then we go out and do something very fun, then we come back, maybe we have a class, maybe we sit around and sing, then we end up staying up till late, having a great time, playing games, schmoozing, hanging out. It's a very intense week, because people are coming in, 35 people, whatever, are coming in from all over the country. They don't know each other, no one knows anybody, pretty much. And by the end of the week, they come out like incredibly close, because you're really with each other 24/7 for 7 days. So one day we went paintballing. That was our activity for the day. So we had a great time. Everyone had a great time. A lot of fun. And now we're all getting off the courts. and it's getting late. You know, the sunset's pretty early these days. So we wanted to do the afternoon services because by the time we would get back all the way to the, back to the campground where we were staying, the ranch, it was actually, by the way, the ranch that we stayed at used to be owned by Jane Fonda.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the truth. So we would not make it in time to make the afternoon services, so we decided to pray there. Now, it's an optional prayer service, so you have probably about 20 guys sitting over here praying, and then a bunch of guys who did not want to pray, and that's totally fine. And they go off to the side, and they're standing between the cars, schmoozing. And one of them, who happens to be like, there's a group comedian in every group, or there's always like the group clown, and he starts making some kind of jokes, and he gets incredibly vulgar. Like I'm talking about the words that really, really, really must not be said. But he's not just saying them once. He's like, "Oh, bleep, you got me," and then, "Oh, bleep, bleep," and "Oh, bleep, 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 bleep," and he's literally yelling this at the top of his lungs. Not 20 yards from where we're all standing, 20 of us, in our silent devotion, like praying to God. And this is what we hear. This guy's yelling it, and then one of the workers goes by like, "Hey man, bleep, bleep, and bleep, 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 bleep." Like I'm talking, when I say bleep, bleep, I'm referring to the worst words. Only the worst words. So as soon as I was done my silent devotion, I went running over to him. I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing?" Like, people are sitting here praying. He's like, "Oh, I didn't notice, because we were just joking around over here. I'm talking to my friends." Okay, so I let it be. He stopped doing it. But I came over to him later and I explained to him, I said, "Look, so what it means to be a considerate human being is not that you don't just like lash out at the person in front of you and call them a moron or whatever. To be considerate means that your brain is always thinking, how is my action right now going to affect everybody in my vicinity? Everybody in my vicinity. How is my action going to affect them? If I'm going to vacation in Florida, and I'm in a large group of people, and a lot of them cannot go to vacation in Florida. They don't have the means to do it. And I walk in, I'm like, "Yeah, so we're going to Florida next week. I booked my tickets and my spa days." And someone's sitting in the group, and they're cholishing. They're feeling so bad, because they would love to do that. They don't have the means to do that. That's inconsiderate. Being considerate means that you have a radar in your head constantly scanning your surroundings. Not just me and my friends are talking between the vans here, and that's my entire world. And the 20 people praying over here, I totally forgot about. So these people, when they talk about what caused them to live long lives, a hypersensitive radar to be considerate to every human being and accord every human being the greatest respect. So the two things we learned from this statement is, number one, just if you want to live long, please, by all means, continue with the goji berries and the acidophilus and all that kind of stuff. I'm not telling you to stop it. But more importantly, sharply hone that radar. And also, it's interesting to see, here are men who've lived a long time. This is their perspective. This is what they're giving over. Like, this is how they see the world at this point. And if you asked them when they were probably 20 years old, what do you think will make you live long? Their responses probably would have been very different. Right? Okay. Okay, next. There's a beautiful story. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky was one of the great sages of the last century. I think he passed in 1986. He was once on a plane sitting next to a professor. And I guess they were both sitting towards the front of the plane, and they both happened to have, and the Rabbi Kamenetsky, one of his grandchildren was there with him. And during the flight, his grandchild kept coming up. "Can I get Zadie something, please? Would Zadie like a drink?" Like even talking to him in the third person, right? "Would Zadie like a drink? Would Zadie like a blanket? Are you cold? Can I get Zadie anything?" And this professor was Jewish also. He was an atheist though. And they had debated religion for the last hour. Finally, he says to the rabbi, I don't understand something. He says, your grandchild gives you such respect. Such respect. I'm lucky if my grandchild tolerates me. I come to the house, and his mom will call him down, and he'll dutifully speak to me for about 55 seconds, which is the minimum that he can get away with. And he's off to his room to play with his friends. Your grandson keeps coming again and again. Can I get you this? Can I get you that? Can I get it? What's the deal? Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky said a fascinating insight. He said, you told me that you're an atheist, correct? He says, yeah. He said, you believe that man descended from the monkey, correct? He says, yeah. He says, in that case, every generation of human being is a more highly evolved, more highly developed human being, and every generation prior to them is one step closer to the ape. So in your grandchild's mind, what are you? You're like a semi-hominid. You're like close to an ape. Like your grandchild is surprised that you don't have your knuckles dragging on the floor. What does Grandpa know from this? What does Grandpa know from social media and Instagram and this? My grandfather, an old fogey, dribbling close to an ape. This is in my world. We believe that the greatest light ever in this world was the light of the Torah being given at Mount Sinai to the Jewish people. And every subsequent generation loses a little bit because something is always lost in transmission. And therefore, they see me as this priceless link to a previous time where the light was much greater. And they want to get as much as they can out of me. They want to learn as much as they can from me. To me, to my grandchild, I'm a shining light because I come from the light and they're going into the darkness. It's a fascinating perspective from a great Jewish sage on how the Torah views the elderly. Next, source number 9. Here's a fascinating story. Rabbi Yochanan said that Choni HaMa'agel always wondered about the verse, a song, a shir al amalos, a song of ascents to God. When we returned to Zion, we were like dreamers. Now, the Jews were in exile for 70 years. A dreamer is like a person who wakes up from a long dream. But the Jews were in exile for 70 years. So he said, who dreams for 70 years? Right? One day he's walking along the road and he sees a man planting a carob tree. And he says to the man, I know that carob trees take an exceptionally long time to bear fruit. How long will it be before this carob tree will bear fruit? And the man said, 70 years. So Choni said to him, you think you're going to live 70 years? You're sitting here, you're working, you're sweating, you're toiling, you're planting these trees. You think you're going to be around to reap the fruits? Why don't you plant an apple tree, right? It'll be ready for you in 3-4 years. Listen to what the man answered. Just as my fathers planted carob trees for me to enjoy, so too I am planting carob trees for them to enjoy. In any case, he went and he fell asleep, and it was a miracle, and he slept for 70 years. And he woke up, he sees this man picking fruit from the tree. And he said, are you the man who planted this tree? The guy said, no, that's my grandfather. He passed away 25 years ago. I'm his grandson. And what the story tells us here, that also one of the great reasons that we have to have enormous respect for the elderly, is that they gave us everything we've got here. I'm sitting here in this JCC, which my children can enjoy. Who built this JCC? My Jewish community? No. The Jewish community before me. Who built up our federations, our schools? Who built up our synagogues, our education system? Who wrote the Sefer Torahs that I read from in the synagogue? Who gave me everything that we have in our society was planted here by people who came before us. And they planted it knowing that they would not be around necessarily to reap the benefits of it. But they planted it anyway because someone planted a carob tree for me, and I will plant it for the next generation. How dare the youth grow up without a direct recognition of those who planted their carob trees? The Torah is telling the youth, have that humility to recognize where everything that you have comes from. We live in a generation of such plenty. And that all came on the backs of people who worked so hard to build up this country. I don't care if the person's an elderly Jewish person, a non-Jewish person. Who built my highways? The interstate highway system, when was it built? In the 30s. Public Works project. After the Depression. Right?
No, 1956 was.
1956. That's close enough. No, I'm kidding. Sorry, what was it?
Well, that was the National Highway Act of 56.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, the National Highway Act. I'm sorry. Who built my bridges? That was the 30s, right? The Public Works Act. Oh, the public. Okay, fine. So the 56, the interstate highway system. That wasn't built by me. That was built by the people I should be standing up for right now. Okay. Next. We'll try to cover one or two more things. What about, and this is a very important one, we're going to skip. What about when an elderly person starts to lose their faculties? Which is a very common phenomenon. Look at source number 12. Rabbi Yeshua ben Leiby, on his deathbed basically, I think it was on his deathbed, said to his children, read the complete Torah portion every week twice, and once in translation. So basically, keep your basic literacy really high in Torah. Meaning, every week there's a Torah portion, read it twice inside the regular Torah words, and once the translation. And be careful with the veins of an animal, as per instructions of Rabbi Yehuda. Basically, make sure you don't eat blood. And here's the one we want to focus on. And be careful with the honor of the elderly who have forgotten their learning due to their age. Be careful with the honor of those who are senile. Be careful with the honor of those who are elderly but do not have the faculties they had. Why? Because the Torah teaches us because the tablets and the broken tablets were in the ark. We know that Moses broke the first set of tablets when he came down from Mount Sinai and he saw the Jews worshiping the golden calf. He broke the tablets. Eventually, about 120 days later, 80 days later, 82 days, somewhere in around 80 days later, on Yom Kippur, he brought back the second set of tablets. But when it came time to build the ark that would be in the Holy of Holies, God said, put the tablets and the broken tablets. The broken tablets are sort of the metaphor for a person who had so much knowledge, but right now, we just can't access it because it's fragmented. Which is exactly what people go through sometimes as they get elderly. The knowledge is all still there, so they can't access it because it's fragmented and they can't put it together. And the Torah says, where do we keep the broken tablets? In the Holy of Holies. So when you come across somebody who unfortunately, due to their old age, is unable to complete their sentences, or repeats themselves again and again and again, and again and again and again, and again and again. No, I'm kidding. Show them enormous accord. Because in Judaism, we put the tablets and the broken tablets in the exact same place. Okay. What we see from here, basically, to sort of summarize, is that the Torah sees the elderly as the wisdom that should be the guide of the current generation, and whether it be the wisdom of specific knowledges that they've learned and acquired during their lives, or just the wisdom of the experiences that they've had, and that which they've seen in this world, what works, what doesn't work. Their softed, rounded edges, their gentility. And the Torah says, show that enormous accord Not because you want them to show you accord, but because they deserve every bit of our respect. They built the world that we have, and they have an enormous amount of ability to offer us, maybe not by leading the charge, but by directing the charge with their great wisdom to the place where it will be most effective and build the greatest world. And that, my friends, is why the Torah focuses so much on honoring the elderly. Thank you so much for coming, and I will see you all sometime next year.